Hey folks, tonight we're diving back into the Stone Age, when clothes were made from just about anything, as long as you didn't starve trying to hunt it down. And there's way more weirdness coming your way. So before you get comfy, take a sec to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually dig what I'm doing here. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always fun to see who's joining us from all corners of the globe. Now, dim those lights, maybe turn on a fan for some white noise, and let's enjoy this late night trip together. We're heading straight into a world where everything's sharp, freezing cold, starved, or on fire, sometimes all at once. You made it through the night, barely hanging on, and the only reason is there's nothing hungry lurking in your cave while you snore like a sinus-sick mammoth. Good news you're still alive. Bad news you're in the Stone Age. Your bed, a rock. Not the comfy kind with a firm mattress. A plain old rock that does zero favors for your spine. If you're lucky, you've got some fur to keep hypothermia at bay, maybe from some poor soul you didn't kill. But now you're rocking their old outfit. Still smells like regret. You try to sit up, but your joints pop loud enough to wake a saber-toothed tiger, or at least get a grumpy growl from the squatter next to you, sharpening their bone knife and clearly unimpressed with your life choices. The air's cold, but not the winter walk kind of cold. I can see my breath, and maybe part of my soul froze too. No fire, just the ghost of warmth past smoke, ashes, and a whole lot of shame. Outside, the sun hasn't even bothered to rise yet, probably because it just doesn't want to. The tribe's already up and moving. This is normal, waking before dawn to pick up rocks and not die. Totally a lifestyle choice. You, on the other hand, look like someone tossed a confused poet into a survival contest. You have no clue what to do, and honestly, neither does anyone else, but they're better at pretending. You stretch terrible idea. Pain shoots through places you didn't even know existed. Your shoulders creak, your back spasms, and your hips officially file a complaint. No breakfast waiting, no chill morning chats, no coffee, just the cold hard fact that if you don't start doing something useful right now, anything you might get left behind or worse, eaten after you conveniently die. And that's how your morning kicks off. You're hungry, not the I skipped lunch kind of hungry. This is the stomach having a full-on argument with itself, and nobody's winning. You look around hoping to spot some berries, or even a sad piece of jerky. Nada. Breakfast in the Stone Age. More like a theory, a hope, a whispered prayer to some careless sky god, or maybe just a big rock with a face carved by a fever dream. If you want to eat, you gotta find food. That means digging, scratching, scavenging, or chasing something that's faster than you and hopefully dumber. Spoiler alert, it's not. Everything edible either has legs or spikes, and in both cases, it's using them against you. You spot a skinny guy by a tree stump, holding something you'd usually avoid touching. He hands you a piece. Tastes like soggy, defeated wood, but hey, it fills your mouth. And more importantly, it's not actively trying to kill you. Rare win. Someone else proudly hoists up a dead bird like it's a gold medal. It's about the size of your hand, mostly feathers and nerves. They start plucking it with the skill of a pro comforting, until you realize they're keeping all the good parts. Apparently, if you catch food, you get to eat it. Great system. You consider hunting. After all, how hard can finding something edible be? Actually, every fruit looks either suspiciously shiny or suspiciously bland. You pick something plum-like. A woman slaps it out of your hand before you can even taste it. Touching it, he hands you a piece. It tastes like soggy, loser wood. But hey, it fills your mouth. And, more importantly, it's not trying to kill you on purpose. That's a win. Someone else hoists up a dead bird like they just struck gold. It's about the size of your hand, mostly feathers and nerves. They start plucking it with the skill of someone who's done this way too many times, which is comforting until you realize they're keeping the whole thing, apparently. When you catch food, you get to eat it. Brilliant idea. You consider foraging. After all, how hard can it be to find something edible? Honestly, every fruit looks suspiciously shiny or suspiciously dull. You pick something that looks like a plum. A woman slaps it out of your hand before you can even taste it. She says nothing, just eyes you like she's thinking. I've seen people die faster than that. So you decide to chew on a piece of old root and pretend that's enough. Nope. Your stomach isn't buying it. It starts plotting, betraying you. You're gonna starve forever if you're not careful. You want help. How cute. This tribe is super busy. Someone's sharpening a flint blade. Another's weaving something that might be a net, a trap, or just a sneaky way to make you feel clumsy. You pick up a rock. You stare at it. It stares back. Congrats. You're bonding with a rock. Here, tools aren't decoration. They're why people still have teeth. They cut, scrape, bash, dig, and sometimes settle arguments. Unless you've spent years figuring out which rock breaks into a blade and which just breaks your thumb, you're about as useful as a soggy leaf. You try copying what others do. One guy smacks two stones together and bam, a razor-sharp edge after just 3 hits. You give it a shot. The rock cracks unevenly and flings a shard right into your face. Now you're bleeding. But hey, you just recreated the original surgery experience. A woman's making rope from strips of hide. She moves like she's been doing this since forever. You try too. The hide slips, rolls up, and somehow binds your fingers together. You've just invented Stone Age handcuffs. That's something. No one explains anything. They don't have to. Tools are life. They're like breathing expected, obvious, and really noticeable when you suck at it. And you suck bad. You sit down with your 2 rocks and try a new plan. Wait for inspiration to hit. Nope. Instead, another rock drops straight on your gut. You pretend it was on purpose. No one buys it. Eventually, someone takes pity and hands you a fresh razor, not out of kindness, but because watching you fail slows everyone down. You nod thanks, then immediately hold it wrong. They shake their heads and get back to work. It's getting colder, which is impressive since you didn't think colder was even a thing. Your fingers freeze, your nose stops feeling temperature, and your feet start acting like someone else's problem. You decide it's time to build a fire. How hard can it be? Right. You've seen it in drawings and dreams. Step 1, gather dry wood. You don't find dry wood. Everything's wet, stubborn, and covered in who knows what. You pick the least suspicious bundle and pray. Step 2, friction. You rub sticks together. Nothing. You rub harder. Still nothing. Finally, heat. Then smoke. Then more smoke. Just enough to burn your eyes and crush your hopes. Then the wind shows up to mock you, blowing it all away. You keep going. Mr. Singh. Now your hands are blistered, your arms ache, and your confidence quietly slipped out of camp without saying goodbye. You glance over. One of the elders already has a fire going. No ceremony, no drama, just a perfect little flame perched on a pile of dry moss like it was born there. You look back at your stuff. Seems cursed. Finally, someone notices. They step over, silently grab your firewood, rearrange it like a bored god, and strike 2 stones together. Spark, smoke, flame, done. They hand it to you without a word and walk off before you can say thanks or demand their dark magic secrets. You stare at the fire burning in your pile. You pretend it was your idea. No one believes you. Fire is everything. Warmth, light, safety, cooked food, and the only reason predators don't drag you into the night. But it's not easy. Never was. Every flame's a battle, and you just lost 5 in a row. You glance over. One of the elders has already started a fire. No rituals, no drama, just a perfect little flame, sitting on a pile of dry moss like it was born there. You look back at your pile of stuff. Looks cursed. Finally, someone notices. They step forward quietly, grab your firewood, and rearrange it efficiently like a bored god, then strike 2 stones together. Sparks, smoke, fire, done. They hand it to you without a word and walk off before you can say thanks or ask for their dark magic secrets. You stare at the fire burning in your pile. You pretend it was your idea. Nobody buys it. Fire is everything. Warmth, light, safety, cooked food, and the only thing keeping predators from dragging you into the night. But that isn't easy. Never has been. Every fire is a battle, and you just lost 5 in a row. You're thirsty, deep, dry, sandpaper level thirsty. The kind of thirst that makes you want to lick moss or chew tree bark just to feel something wet. Luckily, there's a stream nearby. You stagger toward it like a haunted person. Finally, an easy fix. You kneel down, cup your hands, and scoop up a handful of crystal clear water. You drink, then stop. That water has a taste, not a flavor, but a message. It whispers as something metallic and threatening. Seconds later, your stomach responds with a gurgle that sounds like, here's the deal. Back in the Stone Age, water wasn't clean or filtered. It wasn't that fancy meltwater trickling softly down a mountain stream. Nope. It was basically a wild community soup. Animals drank from it. People bathed in it. Sometimes things died in it. Sometimes folks still drank it after spotting a corpse floating around. No quality control whatsoever. Just pure, unfiltered risk. You look around for signs. Any hints this water won't mess you up. Nobody's drinking booze anymore. So maybe that's a clue. One of the elders is boiling something over a fire. Smart move. You nah. You drink straight from the source like it owes you money. A kid walks by and hands you a hollow gourd filled with water. It's warm. Smells kinda like dirt. But hey, still safer than whatever just settled in your colon. No other options. You live in a society that hasn't invented plumbing, water filters, or even consistent advice on which puddle won't ruin your week. Thirst is constant. Water's everywhere. Just a pesky weapon waiting to betray you. You overhear a whispered story about a guy who drank from a river bend and never made it home. You nod slowly, trying to remember the tale while pretending you're not exactly doing that. Now, it's all about waiting. Will you get enough water and feel better? Or will you spend the next 12 hours regretting every tongue decision you ever made? You decide to join the hunt. Bold, brave, and terrifying. They hand you a spear. It's heavy, uneven, and smells like it was shoved somewhere unpleasant last time. Maybe it's ivory or something. The others check their gear calmly, like they're just heading out for groceries. Groceries that might deliberately try to stab you. But whatever. You follow the group into the forest. The air is so quiet. Too quiet. You think that's good. It's not. Silence means every animal within a mile knows you're here and has decided to leave ASAP. Finally, something spots you. A wild boar. Huge. Looks like it's curling weights for fun. You raise your spear. Your hands shake. Your confidence even shakier. The boar looks up. You freeze. The boar does not. It charges. You run. That's your strategy. Sprinting through trees, tripping on a path, and face planting, not a metaphor. Actual dirt. Tastes as inspiring as your performance. Behind you, the real hunters move with deadly precision. One rushes left, another from the side. Spears fly. The boar drops. The tribe cheers. You're still on the ground, rethinking your entire life. They haul the body back to camp. Takes 4 people and lots of grumbling. You hobble after them, pretending you helped. You didn't. Back at the fire, they use stone knives and expert hands to kill the beast. You get handed a raw chunk of meat. You chew it like someone trying to decode what flavor even is. It's chewy, kinda warm, and weirdly emotional. This is supposed to be your heroic breakthrough moment. But honestly, Stone Age hunting wasn't cinematic. It was exhausting, dangerous, and most of the time, you don't catch the animal catches you. Today, you learned something important. You're not the top predator. You're the guy who ruins hunts and almost gets gored by an angry boar missile. After nearly getting trampled by a giant meat rocket, you decide to try something safer plants. How hard could foraging be? You've seen leaves. You even touched a mushroom once. Basically, you're an herbalist now. Most of the time, you don't catch the animal catches you. Today you learned something important. You are not the top predator. You're the guy who ruins the hunt and almost gets gored by a wild boar. After nearly getting trampled by a giant pork missile, you decide to try something safer farming. How hard can foraging be? You've seen leaves. You've even touched a mushroom once. Basically, you're an herbalist now. You head out with a small woven bag and boundless optimism. 2 things in history can kill a human fast. Within minutes, you find something promising, a berry bush, Small, shiny berries with bright colors, which could mean nutrition or a biological warning siren. You grab one, just as you're about to put it in your mouth. A woman nearby swats your hand away like she's saving your life. And honestly, she is nobody explains anything. They don't have to. You're supposed to know what's edible and what's deadly. And if you don't, well, the tribe just gets a better story. You keep walking, digging up some roots. Try to act like you know what you're doing. You even sniff a mushroom with some academic curiosity before tossing it aside. Remembering that mushrooms aren't side dishes here, they're more like a quick ticket to hallucinations in the void before dying under a fern. A man points you to something that looks like a shriveled brown carrot. He nods. You nod back like you're an expert. You chew a bite. Tastes like dirt and regret. But hey, you're not dead yet. So that's a win. The truth is, plants are the real gatekeepers of survival. They don't run or bite. They just sit there silently waiting for you to screw up. One wrong leaf bite and you're puking your guts out with your nervous system on pause. And even the edible stuff takes work. Some roots need boiling. Some leaves need drying. Some seeds will kill you if you forget to roast them first. No shortcuts, just symptoms. When you get back to camp, you've gathered 2 safe roots, a few edible flowers, and a newfound respect for herbal knowledge you totally don't have. Let's talk about what you're wearing, or rather, what you're wearing like a poorly packed meatball. Your outfit is animal skin, scraped clean with a rock, smoked over a fire, and stitched together with a technique best described as handy but kinda insulting. It doesn't fit, it doesn't breathe, it smells like something's still alive, and maybe it still is. No sleeves, just holes to shove your arms through. The suit itself is stiff where it shouldn't be, loose where it really shouldn't be, and probably designed by someone whose only fashion goal was don't die today. You tug at the edges, trying to adjust it. Bad idea. The dry sinew seams react by digging deeper into your skin. Now you're scratched up. Congratulations. In the Stone Age, clothes came with side effects. Nearby, a woman's chewing on a new hide to soften it. Yes, chewing. That's normal. You might wonder how desperate someone had to be to discover teeth as a sewing tool. You try to look serious. It's tough. Your fur coat weirdly rattles as you move. Your boots are 2 mismatched pieces of cloth tied together with strips of gut, and your inner thighs are currently having a turf war with your outer thighs. Then there's the temperature. Somehow your leather outfit is both too hot and too cold at the same time. The fur keeps your torso sweating buckets, while your limbs swing freely in the breeze like a sacrificial offering to the frost gods. And don't ask about rain. Wet skin gets heavy. Suddenly, you're walking around in a soaked sponge that slowly rehydrates down your back. Meanwhile, the rest of the tribe looks perfectly comfy in their handmade gear. Their clothes move with them. Yours moves against you, like it hates being worn by such an incompetent human. You think the tribe likes you. How sweet. You've been here a day, maybe 2. You haven't actively endangered. anyone, and you're trying your best, which in Stone Age terms ranks just above dead weight and just below animal bait. Of course, no one says that out loud. It would be too much effort, but the signs are there. When the group sits around the fire, they scoot a little closer, giving you a generous 4-foot buffer, like you're contagious, which might be true if you consider you just drank from the wrong stream. Social status here is simple usefulness. Can you hunt? Can you gather? Can you not scream when bugs crawl on your feet? No, well then, congratulations. You're not part of the inner circle. You're just strangely creaking as you move. Your boots are two mismatched fabric scraps tied together with gut strings, and your inner thighs are currently fighting for territory with your outer thighs. Then there's the temperature. Somehow your leather outfit is both too hot and too cold at the same time. The insulating fur around your torso makes you sweat, while your limbs flap freely in the breeze like sacrifices to the frost gods. And don't ask about the rain. Wet skin gets heavy. Suddenly, you're walking around in a soaking sponge that slowly revives itself as the water runs down your back. Meanwhile, everyone else in the tribe looks perfectly cozy in their handmade gear. Their clothes move with them. Yours move against you, like they just don't want to be worn by such an incompetent human. You think the tribe likes you. How adorable. You've been here a day, maybe 2. You haven't actively pissed anyone off, and you're trying your best, which in Stone Age terms is just a notch above dead weight, and only a smidge better than animal bait. Of course, no one says this out loud. That would be exhausting, but the signs are there. When the group sits around the fire, they scoot a little closer, giving you a generous 4-foot buffer zone like you're contagious, which, considering you drank from the wrong water source, might actually be true. Social status here is simple usefulness. Can you hunt? Can you gather? Can you keep quiet when bugs crawl up your leg? No. Congrats. You're not in the inner circle. You're just a temperamental guest. You try to contribute. You offer a plan. Wrong move. You try to help Tanner. Escape. You poke a hole right through it. Someone hands you a bundle of sticks and vaguely points to the fire. You stand there holding it, like you're about to perform some grand artistic act. They stop asking you for help. Eventually, kid hands you a sharp rock. You think it's a gift. Nope, it's a test. You fail by holding the blade the wrong way. You think it's a gift? Nope, it's a test. You fail if you hold the blade backwards and let your blood drip onto your own foot. No one reacts. That's the worst part. Nobody laughs at you. They just keep walking, like nature, like the weather. You're not even worth their annoyance yet. You hear someone grumble nearby. It's a tone you don't understand, but it sinks deep into your bones. No threat, no friendliness, just observation, like someone commenting on a log that didn't burn right. You are the log, and you start wondering if wolves are actually the forgiving kind. No lanterns, no torches, no cozy bedside lamp glow. The sun drops behind the horizon like a guillotine, and then the world goes dark. Not dark and cozy, just black. The fire crackles, casting a flickering circle of light That's just bright enough to be scarier than pitch black. Leaves rustle in the distance. Something howls. Maybe a wolf. Maybe a wolf eater. Either way, it knows exactly where you are. It's waiting for you to fall asleep. You edge closer to the fire. No one joins you. Most of the tribe is curled up together in a pile of animal skins, a warm collective ball of trust and shared body heat. You're not invited. You're the one who sneezed while hunting and scared a deer away. You feel the cold of the cave. Sleep isn't easy. Every sound beyond the fire has a purpose. A branch snaps. You sit up. A twig. You freeze. Something sniffs or exhales behind the stone wall. You make peace with your gods. You don't know their names, but you figure they get it. Even the stars look like they're judging you. Pretty? Sure, but useless. You can't eat them, wear them, or scare anything that just moved near the cave entrance. You close your eyes, then open them right away. Your brain reminds you that you're wrapped in a damp fur cloak, lying on a rough slab of rock, surrounded by people who may or may not care if you get dragged off during the night. And here's the catch. If something eats you, it's not out of malice. That just wouldn't work anymore. You're too slow, too weak, and judging by the fact you didn't cook earlier, you probably smell like panic. You wake up sore, stiff, and colder than when you fell asleep, which shouldn't be possible, but the Stone Age has new forms of suffering. Your fur cloak got shifted overnight, offering only emotional support. Your ankle feels like it's just lost a fight with a rock, and there's a fresh bite on your arm. Could be your fault, could be rodents. Honestly, you're just glad something useful is paying attention to you. Outside the cave, the tribe has gathered again. You don't know when they sleep. Maybe never. Maybe exhaustion is just another thing they have to fight to conquer. Like everything else in their lives, you hobble toward the fire, hoping for some warmth. None. Cold ashes. The fire died sometime during the night. A group decision apparently made without your input or your now numb fingers, which qualify as decorations. You try to join the group again. Someone hands you a stick. No instructions, no explanation. You guess it's for poking something, maybe a task, maybe self-defense. Maybe they're just testing what you'll do with it. You fail. Every move hurts. Your muscles ache from doing things they weren't designed for, like survival. Your shoulders hurt from carrying too little. All wrong. Your knees feel like someone stuffed them full of gravel. Your pride is somewhere near. The live firewood you tripped over yesterday. The others have started organizing. Someone's reinforcing the shelter wall with bones. Another is gutting something with surprising ease, involving consulting you. Or your fingers are now so numb they qualify as decoration. You try to rejoin the group. Someone hands you a stick. No instructions, no explanation. You figure it's to poke something, maybe a mission, maybe self-defense. Maybe they're just seeing what you'll do with it. You fail. Every move hurts. Your muscles ache from doing things they weren't designed for, like surviving. Your shoulders scream because you're carrying way too little gear, totally wrong. Your knees feel like someone stuffed them full of gravel. Your pride lies somewhere near the firewood you tripped over yesterday. Others have started organizing. Someone's reinforcing the shelter walls with bones. Another person is gutting something with astonishing ease. You try to help again and trip. It's not a kid's toy, just a little stone with a face carved on it. The kid stares at you like you just insulted their ancestors. Maybe you did. No one told you what to do. Things don't work like that here. People expect you to just know. And if you don't, well, figure it out yourself without asking dumb questions like, has this sharp thing already been covered in blood? At first, you think it's just rain. Nope. It's really starting to pour, and now it's worse, because you know a big storm is coming, and you're not ready yet. Look up and frown like the sky just pulled a rude prank. You drag yourself to the edge of your so-called shelter. Shelter is a generous word for some branches tied together with gut strings and a prayer that the tree isn't leaking. Spoiler alert, it totally is. The wind picks up. It slices through your clothes like you're wearing a damp napkin. Your boots, which are basically just animal skins wrapped around your feet, get soaked right away. Your toes get squished. You pretend not to care. The rain starts coming down hard. Those cold drops feel less like water and more like punishment. Everything suddenly gets slippery. The fire flares up. The walls get crusty. The smell of wet fur hangs in the air like an apology nobody asked for. You crawl into the cave hoping for mercy. A tiny bit better, just a tiny bit. The roof leaks in 3 different spots, and the floor is now a mud pit. You see a confident centipede strolling right through your sleeping spot. Seems like it's better prepared for this life than you are. Others have adapted. Someone's hauling firewood inside, and others are hanging animal skins to dry near the smoke. You try to help, but knock over a pile of tools instead. Big noise follows, and the stairs too. Now both are wet and tripping hazards. Then someone tosses you a half-dry animal skin to wear. You wrap it around yourself like a soggy emperor and try not to look too grateful. It helps. Not much, but some. You sit down, quietly dripping water into a puddle, while the storm howls outside like it's got a personal vendetta against you. It starts with a cough, nothing serious, just a little scratch in your throat. You try to ignore it. By mid-morning, you're wheezing like a dying goat, and your nose has decided to self-destruct. Your eyes are watering. You feel warm, not the cozy kind of warm, the I might catch an infection kind of warm. You don't tell anyone because no one's going to do anything anyway. You've officially entered Stone Age healthcare. Congrats. No doctors, no clinics, no neatly arranged herbs on a wooden shelf next to some friendly fern. Instead, an elder grumbles and hands you a handful of crushed leaves. You chew them. They taste like moldy spinach soaked in old sweat. You nod seriously like that's supposed to help. Spoiler, it doesn't. Your fever just gets worse. Someone suggests a steam treatment. This ritual involves sitting in a hole next to hot rocks while water gets poured on them. You cough, sweat, and contemplate death, like a sauna designed by someone who only heard about saunas in a hallucination. At some point, someone slathers mud, herbs, and maybe animal fat on your chest to lure the ghosts out. Seems like you don't ask any questions. You're way too busy shaking. Pain. No painkillers here. You get a stick to bite and a knowing look from the tribe's unofficial healer, a woman with exactly 3 teeth and a permanent scowl. She whispers something in a language that might just be heavy breathing. Apparently, the cure for everything is time, luck, or not dying before it passes. You try to sleep. Your dreams get weird. In one scene, you're chased by a squirrel the size of a bison. In another, your spear starts talking. You wake up gasping, drenched in sweat and bits of your own leaves. By day's end, you're no better, but also no worse. In Stone Age terms, that means you might survive, or you might just be entering phase 2 of bone pain. You cough, sweat, and think about dying, like a sauna designed by someone who only heard of saunas from hallucinations. At some point, someone slathers a mix of mud, herbs, and maybe animal fat on your chest to lure the ghost out. Seems like you don't ask any questions. You're too busy. Shaking. Pain. No painkillers here. You get a stick to bite and a knowing look from the tribe's unofficial healer. A woman with exactly 3 teeth and a permanent scowl. She whispers something in a language that might just be frustrated sighs. Apparently, the cure for everything is time, luck, or not dying before it passes. You try to sleep. Your dreams are weird. In one scene, you're chased by a squirrel the size of a bison. In another, your spear is talking. You wake up gasping in a puddle of sweat and your own leaf scraps. By day's end, you're no better but no worse. In Stone Age terms, that means you might survive, or you might just be entering phase 2 of the bone ache. Today you accidentally bump into someone not hard, just a light shoulder nudge by the fire. They look at you like you just challenged them to a duel. You stammer an apology. They don't answer. They just stand up, straighten their shoulders, and stare until your soul tries to escape through your socks. Turns out, conflict resolution in the Stone Age wasn't about open dialogue and active listening. It was more like a who will. No concept of de-escalation. No one calmed tensions with soothing words or a gentle reminder that, hey, we're all on the same team here. Instead, someone was casually sharpening a stick nearby, not because of your little spat, just their lifestyle choice. But the message was crystal clear: don't push your luck. Disputes got settled by stares, silence, or sudden personal violence. If things heated up, you had options: a fight, a ritual insult, or just getting kicked straight into the forest, where the leopards often recruited. You try to cool things down by offering smoked fish. Oh, nope. Not accepted. Not because of the offer, but because the fish was overcooked. And now you've offended the granny who invented that recipe 8 generations ago. Eventually, a tribal elder mutters something and snaps a small stick in half. Symbolic stuff. You have no clue what just happened, but the guy you bumped into growls and walks away. Looks like you're not quite dinner yet. Then someone pats you on the back, maybe to comfort you or to check how many ribs you still have. You're not sure. What you learn is this: in the Stone Age, keeping peace took real skill. One wrong look, one unfair share of meat, or snoring too loud could lead to consequences you just can't handle. No agree to disagree here. It's agree or dig a hole. In modern times, you'd leave a 1-star review. Here, you leave the tribe or they leave you. Yeah, you survived that. Maybe. You made it through a whole day in the Stone Age. Even if you were slightly extra, you're still alive, sure, but thriving. Not so much. Your clothes are damp. Your pride's bruised. Your stomach's still holding a grudge. Every muscle in your body officially filed a complaint, but technically, you're still breathing, and that counts as a win. The tribe didn't exile you. Maybe that was an oversight, or maybe they secretly decided you're too interesting to get rid of just yet. After all, watching you try to climb a tree to pick berries, which were actually wasps, gave the whole group 6 minutes of bonding when night falls. You sit near the fire, not too close, but closer than yesterday. You're starting to get the rhythm of this world. Quiet mornings, harsh sun, constant hustle for food, shelter. Respect all things your untrained hands never prepared you for. No one explains anything. They never do. This isn't a world of instructions. This is the world of watching, copying, failing until failure teaches you what survival can't. Someone hands you a chunk of grilled meat. You nod thanks. It's tough, salty, and smells a bit like fur. You chew it like it's your last meal. Maybe it is. You still don't belong here, or do you? Your brain keeps trying to apply logic from a different era, one with microwaves and socks, but slowly, painfully, it starts to adapt. Now you know fire doesn't just magically appear, water's rarely a gift, and roots are out to kill you. This tribe chats, softly in their language, heavy on gestures and expressions rather than words. You don't understand a thing but still nod politely. You lie down on the cold ground, wrapped in a fur that smells like every animal in the forest played tug of war with it. Your body aches. Your dignity's gone, but right now, nothing can stop you. The Stone Age. That's the best you can hope for. You wouldn't last a day, technically. You just did, but don't. Push your luck for round 2. It all starts with silence and ritual, 2 things in Edo, Japan, that were never as harmless as we think. Lord Asano Naganori of Ako, a young daimyo from western Japan, was summoned to follow instructions kind of world. It's a place of watching, mimicking, and failing until failure teaches you the survival tricks. You can't be taught this. Someone hands you a chunk of grilled meat. You nod and say thanks. It's tough, salty, and smells like fur. You chew it like it's your last meal. Maybe it is. You still don't belong here, or do you? Your brain keeps trying to apply logic from another era, you know. Microwaves and socks, but slowly, painfully, it starts to adapt. Now you know fire isn't magic. Water is rarely a gift, and tree roots, they want you dead. This tribe chats, quietly in their own language, mostly gestures and facial expressions. Not words, you don't get a thing, but you nod anyway, trying to look polite. You lie down on your cold patch of earth, wrapped in stink-soaked animal pelts, like the whole forest played tug of war with them. Your body aches, your dignity long gone, but right now, nothing can break you. Back in the Stone Age. That's the best you can hope for. You won't last a day, technically. You just survived one. But don't. Push your luck for round 2. It all begins with silence and ritual, 2 things in Edo, Japan, that were never as harmless as we think. Asano Naganori, the young lord of Ako from western Japan, was summoned to the shogun's palace in Edo for a delicate mission host and entertain the imperial envoys from Kyoto. This was no small gig. The court demanded precision, protocol was king, and the man in charge of ceremonies was a guy named Kira Yoshinaka, a high-ranking court official, the ceremony master, and unofficially famous for his fondness for bribes. But Lord Asano wasn't the type to play those games. He came from a proud samurai lineage. Honor mattered. A guy named Kira Yoshinaka, a high-ranking court official, the head honcho of ceremonies, and unofficially notorious for expecting bribes. But Lord Asano, he wasn't playing those games. Born from a proud samurai lineage, honor wasn't something he'd bargain with, and maybe that was his downfall because he had a face that just couldn't fake a smile. Kira noticed this and got irritated. Over the next few days, Kira started poking at Asano with insults, snide remarks, harsh scoldings, petty humiliations. The solemn halls of Edo Castle echoed with whispers. Kira called Asano a bumpkin, mocked his manners, and made him wait outside the rooms he was supposed to be hosting in. Tension built up quietly and painfully, like pressure under lacquered wood. Then, on March 21st, 1701, it snapped. In the Edo Castle hallway, Asano pulled his sword and attacked Kira. His blade grazed the man's face and shoulder. It was an insult, not an attempt to kill, but drawing a weapon inside the shogun's palace that was unforgivable, no matter the provocation. Kira survived. Asano was arrested on the spot. Within hours, the shogunate made its ruling. No investigation, no second chances. Lord Asano was ordered to commit seppuku ritual suicide at sunset. His lands were confiscated, his servants dismissed, his family disgraced, and the scariest part, Kira walked away unscathed, unpunished, and victorious. But the story doesn't end there. Among Asano's masterless samurai, his ronin was a man named Oishi Kuranosuke. While the world kept spinning, Oishi quietly started plotting. This wasn't just revenge, it was something deeper, older, a test of Bushido, the way of the warrior, and things were just getting started. Lord Asano's death should have been the final period. His house was dismantled, his men scattered. The shogun had made it clear no revenge. Kira stayed safe on his estate, protected by law. Justice was swift and cold, but outside the shogun's palace, samurai law told a different story. Oishi Kuranosuke, Asano's chief retainer, didn't cry, he didn't shout. He bowed his head, disbanded the Ako samurai, and obeyed the orders. On the surface, he seemed compliant, but inside he was waiting. The ronin scattered. Some went home to their families. Others took up trades, became monks, or even begged. The world thought their loyalty died with their lord. But beneath that surface, a plan was brewing. Oishi knew the shogunate was watching. Revenge was a crime, especially against someone like Kira, who still held status and favor. Any sign of plotting could mean arrest or worse, execution before they could act. So Oishi played the fool. He moved to Kyoto, drank openly in the streets, gambled publicly, and hung out with courtesans. For over a year, he put on the perfect picture of a broken, disgraced, sloppy drunk, a total failure. Meanwhile, his Ronin pals did the opposite, writing secret letters in tea houses and shrines' shadows. They kept in touch, studied Kira's moves, mapped his Edo mansion, learned the gatekeeper's habits, the rhythms of the gates, the heartbeat of the house. Meanwhile, Kira got comfortable. He had powerful friends, a healing scar, and his enemies vanished into thin air. What else could they do? No master, no name, no power. And that's exactly what Oishi wanted him to think. Because behind that sake-soaked facade and slurred words was a mind sharper than any sword. He wasn't just planning a murder. He was drafting a statement, a message for all Japan, proof to the world that Bushido, the real Bushido, was not dead, not yet. For over a year, he played the part of a broken man, shamed, disheveled, drunk, dishonored, the perfect picture of failure. Meanwhile, his Ronin buddies did the opposite, sneaking around, writing secret letters in shadowy tea houses and temples. They stayed in touch. They studied Kira's moves. They mapped out his Edo mansion. They learned the gatekeeper's habits, the gate's rhythm, the house's heartbeat. Meanwhile, Kira felt comfortable. He had high-status friends and a quick healing scar. His enemies had vanished into thin air. What more could they do? They had no lord, no name, no power, and that's exactly what Oishi wanted him to think. Because behind the sake-stained clothes and stammered words was a mind sharper than any sword. He wasn't just planning murder, he was drafting a statement, something to tell all Japan, something to prove to the world that Bushido, the real Bushido, was not dead. Not yet. And in the cold heart of winter, when the time was right, that silence would finally break. When snow began falling in Edo at the end of 1702, the 47 Ronin made their call. No more waiting, no more hesitation. It was time for revenge. Oishi Kuranosuke gathered his scattered brothers. Some had traveled days to reach Edo. Others never really left, but one by one, they regrouped, not as lost wanderers, but as just to get to Edo. Others never really left, but one by one, they gathered again, not as drifters, but once more as samurai, not for money, not for honor restored, but for duty, the kind that lives after death. The plan was precise. Everyone had a role. This wasn't a brawl, it was a show, and every detail mattered. They trained with new weapons, fast and silent, crafted winter armor, light enough to climb walls, but thick enough to take a hit. They even put together a fake fire brigade in uniform to avoid suspicion if anyone wondered why a bunch of men were parading through the city at night. Kira's mansion was a fortress, tall walls, dozens of guards, multiple gates, but it had been studied for over a year, layout memorized, routines predictable, servants indifferent. Most had grown careless. Why wouldn't they? The Ronin were gone, their leader drunk, their ideals buried. Oishi made sure his family was safe. He divorced his wife and kicked her and the kids out, away from the brewing bloodshed. He knew how costly this would be. He knew it might all be for nothing, and he knew that, even if it worked, they'd all be sentenced to death. But Bushido leaves no room for personal safety. On the 14th night of December, January 30th, 1703, by Western calendar, they moved snow-blanketed Edo, muffling footsteps and silencing sounds, perfect ally. At 2 a.m., the Ronin split into two teams. One hit the back gate, the other the front. A signal would be given once both sides were in position. The mission was simple: take the house, kill Kira, and cause as little city chaos as possible. No foolishness, no unnecessary blood. Justice? Some had waited over a year. Others had spent that year pretending to forget. Now, with swords drawn and guards posted all night, forgetting was no longer an option. Justice wouldn't wait. The attack began quietly. No yelling, no wild fighting, just coordination and measured violence under the pale winter moonlight. Oishi's vanguard smashed the main gate with a battering ram, breaking the heavy door before guards realized they were surrounded. Meanwhile, the rear team scaled the walls, silently taking down hundreds of enemies with the practiced efficiency of those who had trained this night 100 times in their heads. The Kira household panicked, guards in chaos, half-dressed, many drunk or dozing. Servants screamed, lanterns lit too late. The Ronin moved like wolves, dropping foes with fast, precise strikes. No random slaughter. They shouted only Kira was their target. Anyone who didn't fight back was spared. Oishi's eldest son, Chikara, just 16, fought alongside his dad. Despite all the Bushido talk, this wasn't some abstract ideal. It was blood, steel, smoke in your lungs, swords sliding on icy tile, loyalty shown with exact precision, the price carved deep into bone and marrow. The Ronin searched the mansion for Kira, but the man was gone. They ransacked every room, every shadowy corner, interrogated servants. Finally, they found a secret courtyard in a hut behind the garden. A man in a simple robe trembled over coals and straw, pale-faced, shaking. It was Kira. He refused to give his name. He refused to speak, but the scar on his face, left by Lord Asano almost 2 years before, was still there. Oishi offered him a chance to die, with honor, a dagger placed before him, seppuku, like a true samurai. But Kira couldn't do it. He just stared coldly. The man who destroyed a whole clan without lifting a sword couldn't face his moment. Oishi bowed once, then struck. Kira Yoshinaka died not as a lord, but as a coward. The Ronin wrapped his head, calm in full armor, and walked through the snow-covered streets of Edo. They brought the trophy to Sengakuji Temple, where Lord Asano is buried. They washed his head, placed it before the grave, and prayed. Their revenge was complete, their fate sealed. When dawn broke, Edo woke up to witness the impossible. News spread faster than wildfire. Kira Yoshinaka was dead, killed right in the city center by 47 Ronin, who didn't run away. didn't hide, but marched straight to the temple where their lord was buried. They had zero intention of escape. They just knelt down, presented the severed head, and waited. The city, usually noisy with the merchants and samurai shouting, suddenly went eerily silent. Some called them heroes, some called them criminals, but no one called them cowards. Now the authorities were in a real pickle. The law was crystal clear. Revenge killing was illegal. Samurai didn't stand above the law, no matter how noble their ideals. But the public didn't see criminals. They saw men who embodied Bushido to the bone. They didn't follow the shogun's laws, but a loyalty code way older and deeper. The shogunate mulled it over for weeks. This wasn't just about crime and punishment. It was about the soul of samurai culture. If the ronin were pardoned, it would spark more revenge killings. If punished, the people might riot. Meanwhile, the 47 men stayed put at Sengakuji. No resistance, no begging. They sat in silent contemplation, tending their lord's grave and awaiting their fate. Aishi, the mastermind, said nothing to the public. He'd spoken enough through his actions. Finally, the decision was made. The ronin would be allowed to die with honor, not executed like criminals, but ordered to perform seppuku, ritual suicide, just like the samurai they claimed to be. On the morning of February 4th, 1703, each man received a dagger. They wore white robes, the color of purity and death. They bowed to officials, bowed to each other, and bowed in respect to Lord Asano. Then, one by one, they sliced into themselves, guided by a second person who would finish the ritual with a clean strike. Even Chikara, Aishi's teenage son, grabbed the sword without hesitation. No man faltered. They died not in disgrace, but in legend. Their bodies were buried beside their master at Sengakuji. Those graves still stand, 47 stones lined up neat, covered with incense and offerings from pilgrims, whispering their names because in death they achieved what life couldn't. They became eternal. The story of the 47 Ronin never faded. First, it echoed through the streets of Edo, then into the halls of power, and finally deep into the Japanese soul. For centuries, samurai were both warriors and servants, expected to kill without hesitation and die without complaint. But the 47 Ronin blurred that line. Yes, criminals, but also models of loyalty. They broke the law but stayed true to the spirit of Bushido. They disobeyed the shogun, but honored their lord by dying more fully than most did in life. This paradox stunned everyone. Was Bushido obedience to the state, or to the master? Was justice defined by human law or the warrior's will? Tokugawa officials tried to downplay the seriousness. They feared copycats. They feared chaos, but it was too late. The story had begun, grew strong, and couldn't be stopped. Within weeks, kabuki plays were staged. The tales were retold cleverly, with characters renamed, but the same story. The authorities banned them, but new plays popped up anyway. People bought woodblock prints showing the Ronin attacking, kneeling in seppuku, or parading with Kira's head. Even the strictest law followers found the contradiction hard to swallow, because although the Ronin acted outside the law, they did it with dignity and a contradiction, because even though the Ronin broke the law, they did it with dignity and restraint. No looting, no gloating, no running away. They waited, planned, struck, then surrendered. In that restraint, you see something pure, something ancient. Oishi Kuranosuke became the model of an ideal retainer, calm, strategic, loyal to death. His son, Chikara, became the image of youthful devotion. The young Ronin are remembered as noble souls who sacrificed futures they'd never have. And the story didn't just survive. Over time, it turned into a national legend, celebrated in plays, novels, and eventually movies. Every generation finds something in it: pride, sadness, or a blueprint for courage, because in a world where loyalty is often just a word on paper, these Ronin wrote their loyalty in blood and snow, and whether the shogunate liked it or not. The people decided these men weren't traitors. They were the last true samurai. The 47 graves at Sengakuji Temple aren't just memorials. They became a shrine not just for the men buried there, but for the samurai spirit itself. Pilgrims from all over Japan come to light incense, bow, and whisper prayers not to gods, but to men. The temple itself is a quiet paradox. Amid the noisy, bustling city, Sengakuji remains peaceful. Monks tend the grounds with solemn care. Snow falls on the gravestones every winter, just like the night Kira died every year. On the anniversary of the attack, December 14th, on the lunar calendar, visitors gather to remember. Lanterns flicker, incense drifts in the air. Some show up decked out in full samurai gear. Others come silently, leaving flowers, coins, or a quiet thank you. Even skeptics of revenge feel drawn to the place, because no matter your take on law or ethics, you can't ignore the sacrifice, discipline, and quiet resolve of 47 men who gave up their futures for an idea older than the shogunate itself for generations. These graves have been treated with reverence and awe. School kids get dragged there to learn loyalty. Soldiers visited before heading to battle. Writers, poets, and philosophers scribbled notes, trying to capture the silent power of what went down. And while the outside world changed, Edo became Tokyo. Japan shifted from feudal backwater to modern nation. The story didn't fade. In fact, it grew, even during the Meiji Restoration, when samurai status was abolished and Bushido laws merged with nationalism. The story endured. Sure, it got repurposed, but it was never forgotten. Movies were made, plays revived, books translated into languages the Ronin never dreamed of. Today, tourists visit Sengakuji alongside skyscrapers and vending machines. They snap selfies like everybody else, but still, most fall silent in front of Oishi Kuranosuke's statue. There's something about it, something quiet, something just right. Here lies a man who waited a year to strike, knowing it would cost him his life. Here rests a man who chose loyalty over safety, and in this quiet corner of Tokyo, you can still feel the weight of that choice. Even after 3 centuries, The snow hasn't melted over centuries. The tale of the 47 Ronin slipped from history into legend, and from legend into entertainment. What started as a real-life revenge under the Tokugawa shogunate is now pure theater. By the mid-18th century, the story was told as Chushingura, a kabuki and bunraku play that changed names and amped up the drama but kept the heart, loyalty, sacrifice, justice delayed but never denied. Audiences cried, cheered, and came back for more. Characters became archetypes. Aishi was the tough genius, Kira the arrogant villain, Chikara the noble youth. Stage actors specialized in these roles, passing performances down like family heirlooms. Some families played Oishi for decades. The words changed, but the meaning rests here, where a man chose loyalty over safety, and in this quiet corner of Tokyo, you can still feel the weight of that choice. Even after 3 centuries, the snow hasn't melted over the centuries. The tale of the 47 Ronin slipped from history into legend, and from legend into entertainment. What began as a real act of revenge under the Tokugawa shogunate is now literally a stage. By the mid-18th century, the story was told as Chushingura, a kabuki and bunraku play that changed names and dramatic twists on events. But the spirit stays intact. Loyalty, sacrifice, justice delayed but not denied. The audience cries, cheers, and hits replay again and again. Characters turn into archetypes. Aishi, the tough genius, Kira, the arrogant villain, Chikara, the noble young guy. Stage actors specialize in these roles, passing down performances like family heirlooms from generation to generation. Some families have played Oishi for decades. The writing changes, but the meaning never changes. When Japan opened up to the West in the 19th century, the story of the 47 Ronin went global. Scholars translated it. Fans praised its moral values. This was the kind of tale Victorian Europeans loved. Orderly, noble, tragic, naturally. Hollywood had its own ideas. Some films were made some respectful, others not so much. In 2013, a fantasy action flick starring Keanu Reeves retold the story with witches, demons, and a British-blooded hero. Spoiler, it flopped in Japan. The folks still lighting candles at Sengakuji aren't there for CGI explosions. They come for something else quiet, reverence, and authenticity. Still, the fact that such a movie got made says a lot. The story's reached a point where it can be twisted because everyone knows it. Twisted or not, it can't be forgotten. In manga and anime, Ronin show up as subtle nods, tales of wandering warriors, lone swordsmen on impossible missions, loyal clans standing against corrupt power. The classic setup because the core story is timeless. A group of men bound by oath, facing death to protect meaning in a crumbling moral world. Modern Japan has long moved past katana-wielding lords, but the idea of loyalty's still kicking. Even if the system's a mess, it pops up in boardrooms, classrooms, pop songs, protest speeches, not always loud, sometimes just a whisper that real honor might be inconvenient, tough, even illegal, but it's still alive, and every time. 47. Ronin rise again, 300 years later. The 47 Ronin haven't gone anywhere. Their names aren't just carved on stones at Sengakuji. They're etched deep into the Japanese psyche. They're not just history. They're symbols, the kind you reach for when everything else gets fuzzy, when law and justice no longer match, when loyalty is worth more than life itself. And that's why their story sticks around. No neat ending here. Yeah, they're all dead, every single one, but in dying, they sparked a debate that never cools down. Were they heroes or criminals? Is their loyalty noble or dangerously outdated? Did they elevate Bushido or prove it's a bad fit for law and order? The Tokugawa shogunate wanted to bury the conversation with them. Instead, their deaths lit a slow-burning fire inside every institution trying to define what a samurai really is. Even now, you'll catch university professors arguing both sides. Some say the Ronin were glorified murderers clinging to a dying code. Others argue they stood for the best of humanity, a moral compass that couldn't be bribed in an increasingly bureaucratic world. And the public still roots for the latter. In modern Japan, you'll see Ronin shadows everywhere. Salarymen refusing to betray their bosses during scandals, even if it wrecks their careers. Soldiers serving silently and sacrificing without complaint. Even manga heroes stand alone, armed with nothing but principle. Ronin aren't relics. They're reference points. And in an age where loyalty's rare and truth's negotiable, their story feels oddly modern. Oishi Kuranosuke never wrote memoirs. He left no grand ethical thesis. But he left a razor-sharp question: what do you serve? And how much are you willing to pay? The 47 Ronin answered that question, not with words, not slogans, but with time, silence, and finally, their lives. They obeyed a dead man's order. They broke the law to keep a promise, and in doing so, they became more than samurai. They became the mirror every generation must look into and ask, will I follow? And do I have the guts to stop? In ancient Egypt, harming a cat was basically flirting with disaster, not just social shame, but legal punishment and sometimes mob justice. That's serious. Cats weren't pets in the modern sense. They were sacred, untouchable, and in some cases, deadly seriousness. Cats weren't pets in the modern sense. They were sacred, untouchable, and in some cases, the grief over losing one was even bigger than losing a family member. When a cat died, Egyptians shaved their eyebrows to mourn not a fashion statement, but a ritual. Cats weren't just buddies. They were divine protectors. This reverence came straight from religion. Bastet, goddess and daughter of Ra, was the cat goddess representing family, fertility, music, and protection. She started out as a fierce, destructive lioness, but over time softened into a graceful cat, still powerful, just way more charming. Her temple was stuffed with offerings, jewelry, perfume, and most importantly, cats, real, living, breathing cats. Cats that breathed, roamed freely, got fed by priests, and were basically walking avatars of the goddess herself. Archaeologists found massive cat cemeteries near Bastet's main temple in Bubastis. Cat mummies carefully wrapped up like human corpses, lined up perfectly. Some buried with jewelry, others preserved in resin and perfume. Yeah, this wasn't some quirky hobby. It was an actual industry. Cats were bred for sacred purposes, blessed, and sometimes ritualistically sacrificed to serve in the afterlife. Deep symbolism here. Cats hunted snakes, Ra's eternal enemy, the sun god's nemesis. This was no simple pest control. It was cosmic warfare. Cats lounging in the sun, patrolling granaries, with that aloof, inscrutable stare like they didn't belong on this planet. Egyptians saw that and didn't think lazy pets. They thought holy mystery. Outsiders were baffled. Greek historians like Herodotus were amazed and maybe a little amused by how quickly Egyptians' rage flared if a cat got hurt. In battle, Persians even used cats as living shields, knowing Egyptians would hesitate to attack. With modern eyes, it sounds over the top, but Egyptians didn't see animals as beneath humans. They were closer to gods. Those graceful, independent cats stood at the crossroads of beauty and the sacred, not just as pets. On Crete, surrounded by the deep blue Aegean Sea, bulls didn't roam the fields, they ruled palaces. The Minoans, one of Europe's earliest advanced civilizations, didn't just admire bulls, they ritualized them. They built legends around them, painted them on walls like gods. Step into the grand palace of Knossos and you'll see vibrant frescoes, bulls leaping, acrobats vaulting over horns, scenes full of rhythm and motion. This wasn't just a sport, it was sacred theater. They called it bull leaping, a ritual dance, a display of agility and respect for death. Men and women both took part, not to kill the bull, but to engage with it, to shrink the gap between human and divine. Because for the Minoans, the bull wasn't just an animal, it was cosmic power. This symbol probably seeped deep into their mythology. The legendary Minotaur, half man, half bull, lived in a labyrinth beneath Knossos. Myth or not, maybe. But myths often echo deeper truths. Maybe the Minotaur was a memory of ritual power, the fusion of human and beast in sacred space. The bull also connected to the sky. Its horns mirrored the crescent moon. Its roar thundered. Its massive body seemed more than just flesh. Back when people read the world in symbols, the bull shouted a message power, fertility, movement. Sacrifice was probably part of this reverence. Though Minoans were less bloodthirsty than later Greeks, some bulls were killed in rituals, but others were honored alive. They paraded, painted, and praised them. The bull's power wasn't always in its death. It was right there, in front of you, unlike Roman arenas where bulls died for sport. Minoan rituals stressed harmony, a dance honoring the danger between humans and beasts. The goal wasn't domination, but touching something beyond. The bull wasn't. Later Greek cultures, some bulls were sacrificed in rituals, but others were celebrated alive. They paraded, painted, and praised them. Bull's power wasn't always in its death. It was right there in front of you, unlike the Roman arena, where bulls were slaughtered for fun. Minoan rituals seemed more about harmony, a dance respecting danger. between humans and animals. The goal wasn't domination, but touching something beyond. The bull wasn't just a symbol of chaos. It was the gatekeeper of cosmic order in Mesoamerican languages. Facing a bull wasn't just bravery, it was a spiritual encounter, a fragile balance between flesh and myth. In the dense jungles of Central America, under thick foliage and echoing bird calls lurked a creature ruled not by size but mystery, the jaguar, for the Maya, Olmec, and Aztec. This spotted predator wasn't just an animal, it was a god in disguise, a shapeshifter, a traveler between worlds. Jaguars hunted at night, slipping silently through shadows with eyes. That alone made it sacred, in a world where night meant the underworld and the unknown. Anything that prowled the darkness was a guide, a messenger, or a ruler. Teotihuacan, the earliest known Mesoamerican civilization, carved giant stone heads some say had cat-like features, wide noses, curled lips, fierce eyes. Their art also shows jaguars part human, part beast, often bearing fangs and snarling. Scholars still debate what it all means. But one thing's clear, these folks didn't just fear jaguars, they wanted to be them. The Maya took this obsession further. Their kings often saw themselves as jaguars, wearing skins, iron helmets, and symbols linking their power to the beast. The underworld, called Xibalba, was a dark, challenging place, and jaguars were free to roam it. Some Maya gods, like the fierce jaguar god of the underworld, showed the dual nature of night and death, scary but necessary. Then there were the Aztecs, whose elite warriors were called jaguar knights. They weren't just soldiers, they were sacred fighters chosen to embody the jaguar's ferocity, decked out in full jaguar pelts, complete with snarling masks and claws. They didn't just fight like jaguars, they believed they were jaguars. Battle wasn't just conquest, it was a ritual reenacting cosmic struggle, sacrifice. Though grim to modern ears, was central. Sometimes jaguars themselves were offered to the gods, not out of cruelty, but respect. Killing a jaguar meant releasing sacred power. Offering its heart was giving the gods what they considered family. For Mesoamericans, jaguars weren't just big cats. They were gateways between life and death, day and night, humans and gods, predators, sure, but also priests in fur, in the temples and forests of ancient India. Elephants weren't just majestic beasts, they were living gods carved from flesh and muscle. Nothing was bigger in size or symbolism to ancient Indians. Elephants stood for strength, wisdom, memory, royalty, and the sacred rhythm of the universe. They weren't just animals, they were woven into myths at the heart of. This reverence is Ganesha, the elephant-headed god, with his belly full of sweets, broken tusk, and ever-calm smile. Ganesha is beloved in every corner of Indian life. He's the remover of obstacles, the patron of new beginnings, the god people pray to before weddings, travels, or building a house. But behind that gentle face lies a powerful origin story, Legend says Ganesha was created by goddess Parvati to guard her privacy. When Shiva tried to enter her room, Ganesha blocked him, not knowing this was Parvati's hubby. In a rage, Shiva chopped off the boy's head. Parvati's grief shook heaven and earth. To make amends, Shiva promised to bring the boy back to life. Using the head of the first creature, he found a giant elephant. And so Ganesha was reborn part human, part elephant, and totally divine. But elephant worship wasn't just mythology. In ancient India, real elephants symbolized royal power. They were war thrones, armed, decorated, and both feared and revered by their riders. An army with elephants wasn't just strong, it was lucky. Temples often kept elephants as part of their rituals. In Kerala in the south, sacred elephants still parade yearly festivals wearing golden headpieces and painted tusks. Devotees bow as they pass, not out of fear but respect. These elephants are seen as divine power walking the earth, slow gods mingling with humans. In Vedic literature, elephants are linked to rain and fertility, especially Airavata, the cosmic elephant, Mount of Indra, king of gods. People, they say Airavata was born from the ocean's churning, white as a cloud with multiple heads, whipping up storms like a boss. To ancient India, elephants weren't just animals. Nah, they were thunder embodied, brains on 4 legs, and the silent muscle of eternity. For most ancient folks, snakes were never just snakes. They were symbols of power, rebirth, danger, wisdom, and all things sacred. Depending on your spot in the ancient world, snakes could be holy protectors or chaos incarnate. In ancient Mesopotamia, snakes played both roles. Ningishzida, the god with snakes coming out of his shoulders, ruled the underworld and plants. He was both guardian and gatekeeper, a creature dancing between the living and the dead. The Sumerians didn't hate snakes. They got that snakes were complex, dangerous, yeah, but absolutely essential. In Hinduism, snakes or demons really are legit sacred creatures, not monsters or evil spirits, but semi-divine souls tied to water, fertility, and cosmic balance. The Nagas chill under rivers and lakes in their fancy palaces, and one of the most iconic images in Hindu myth, Vishnu, the preservation god, lying on the endless coils of the serpent Shesha, floating on the cosmic ocean. The snake isn't threatening. It's time, patience, curling up, eternal. But snakes aren't always Mr. Nice Guy. In Jewish tradition, the Garden of Eden snake is cunning and cursed, forever tied to deception and humanity's fall, even there. Though it's nuanced. In the book of Numbers, Moses uses a bronze snake on a pole to heal plague victims' rare moment when snake equals salvation, not sin. In Central America, snakes hit sacred status. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god, is a snake-bird mix representing wind, learning, and creativity. His dual nature is key-grounded but able to fly. The perfect metaphor for divine smarts, light on the feet but reaching the sky. Then there's Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, popping up from Egypt to Greece. It's infinity, life and death cycles, destruction, and rebirth all rolled into one. To the ancients, snakes weren't evil, they were silent, cold mysteries eternal, not quite monsters, not quite gods, but always watching, always coming back, while cats lounge in temples and birds fly heavenward. Another creature ruled ancient Egyptian waters with wide jaws and unblinking eyes. The crocodile, for river-dwelling folk along the Nile. Crocs were constant threats lurking under murky waters, silent and invisible, until bam, attack. But instead of hate, they got worship, fear, yes, but also honor, respect, even protection. This uneasy reverence centered on the crocodile god Sobek, half man, half croc. Sobek wasn't some tiny swamp spirit. He was a creator god, a fertility god, and the symbol of the Nile's wild, unpredictable power. He also guarded pharaohs and led armies. In one myth, Sobek helped put Osiris's body back together, making him not just a scary god, but also a healer and life restorer. Sobek's realm was water, power, and the military. The Nile, Egypt's lifeblood, was his bloodstream. Crocs were his eyes, messengers, incarnations. They swam through reeds like moving monks. Temples to Sobek popped up all over Egypt, especially near croc-heavy waters. Most famous was Crocodilopolis. Yep, a real place called Shedit, in the Fayum Oasis. There, priests cared for a living sacred croc, believed to be Sobek himself incarnate. This divine beast got dolled up with gold and jewels, fed only the finest meats, and lounged in a man-made pool, treated like royalty. Of Sobek, the crocodile god half man, half crocodile head. Sobek wasn't your average marsh spirit. He was a creator god, fertility god, and symbol of the Nile's unpredictable power. He was also protector of the pharaoh and guardian of the army. In one myth, Sobek helped restore Osiris's body, making him not just terrifying, but a healer and restorer of life. Sobek's domain was water, power, and the military, the Nile, Egypt's lifeblood. When it was his bloodstream, crocodiles were his eyes, messengers, his living avatar. They swam beneath reeds like monks in motion. Temples to Sobek were built all over Egypt, especially near crocodile-infested waters. The most famous was Crocodilopolis. Yes, a real place called Shedit, in the Fayum Oasis. There, priests cared for a living sacred crocodile, believed to be Sobek himself incarnate. This holy beast was decked out in gold and jewels, fed the finest meats, and relaxed in an artificial pond. Treated like royalty. When it died, it was embalmed, carefully wrapped, anointed with perfume, and buried. Thousands of crocodile mummies have been found across Egypt, often buried with baby crocs, like spiritual offspring. But Sobek wasn't just about animals and offerings. He embodied the brutal side of nature, a reminder that power can be beautiful and terrifying at once. The Nile could give life or drown you. Crocodiles could be gods or predators. Worship wasn't a shield against danger, it was respect. The ancient Egyptians weren't trying to tame crocs. They worshipped them because they saw a god's smile in those jaws. In the cold, grim world of the Norse. Animals weren't pets or pals. They were omens, warnings, prophecies handed down through teeth and wings. And nothing was bigger in this harsh mythology than wolves and ravens. Let's start with the ravens, Hugin and Munin, Odin's ever-watchful eyes. Their names mean thought and memory. Every morning, they flew all over the world gathering secrets and signs. Every night, they'd perch on Odin's shoulders and whisper everything they saw. These weren't just birds. They were extensions of divine intelligence, embodiments of wisdom, insight, and foresight. On the battlefield, ravens feast on corpses. To the Norse, their presence was not just creepy, it was sacred. A raven circling overhead wasn't just hunting, it was reading fate. Then the wolves show up. Fenrir, the giant wolf, wasn't just another beast in Norse tales. He was the four-legged embodiment of apocalypse, born from the trickster Loki and the giants. Fenrir was destined to swallow Odin himself during Ragnarok, the gods' final destruction. Terrified of this fate, the gods tricked Fenrir into being chained up with a magical leash. He broke every chain except one, a thread forged from the impossible, the sound of a cat's footsteps, roots growing, and fish breathing. When they finally bound him, he howled with rage and waited for the end of days. But wolves aren't always ferocious. Odin himself was accompanied by two wolves, Geri and Freakin, who ravenously ate from his table. Odin was famous for drinking only wine. These wolves were part of him, like the raven symbols of Ra, primal divine power, loyalty, hunger, and instinct. For the Norse, these animals weren't metaphors. They were living forces of the universe, parts of the cold grand machine of fate. They didn't have to be cute, loyal, or even tame. They just had to be real. Up north, animals weren't signs of peace or prosperity. They were messengers of war, symbols of prophecy, and the last thing you'd see before glory or death. In ancient Vedic India, cows weren't just farm animals. They were sacred essences, distilled into muscle and milk. To understand their role in Vedic culture is to understand how deeply ancient people saw the divine in everyday life. The Rig Veda, one of the oldest sacred texts on earth, considered cows as suffering beings, not to be killed. They were linked with a deity, the infinite mother goddess, and Prithvi, the earth itself. The cow wasn't seen as separate from nature. It was nature. It nourished like the soil, gave like the sky, and walked among humans as a living blessing. Milk, butter, ghee, and curds weren't just food. They were offerings used in yajna rituals, fire offerings to nourish the gods with flame. Pouring clarified butter into fire wasn't just a pious gesture, it was cosmic alchemy, turning the cow's gift into divine energy. Cows were tied to Kamadhenu, the mythical wish-granting cow who could provide abundance and nourish all creatures. They said Kamadhenu lived in sages' hermitages, appearing when needed to restore balance and prosperity. She wasn't owned or fed. She was revered. Zabu, the indigenous humped cattle of India, were decorated with bells and garlands, At festivals like Gopashtami, cows were bathed, painted, and draped in cloth. In some, the cow is tied to Kamadhenu, the mythical cow symbolizing abundance, able to grant any wish and nourish all creatures. People say Kamadhenu lives in the hermitages of sages, popping up when balance and prosperity need a little nudge. She's not owned or fed, she's revered. Zabu, India's native humped cattle, get decked out with bells and garlands. During festivals like Gopashtami, cows get baths, painted, and wrapped in scarves. In some villages, they even get paraded into temples to receive blessings or dish them out. Unlike the aggressive bulls of the Cree or the scary jaguars of Mesoamerica, cows stand for gentleness, restraint, and nurturing. Even as empires rise and fall, cows stay unbothered, politically neutral, but spiritually untouchable. This reverence even seeped into law. Ancient Indian laws discouraged and sometimes outright banned cow slaughter, not because of economics, but because it was seen as a crime against cosmic order. Hurting a cow meant disturbing the balance of the universe, and even thousands of years later, that reverence hasn't faded one bit. You can still hear it echo in temples, fields, and whispered prayers by roadside shrines. In Vedic India, cows weren't just the backbone of village economies. They were like the patient moms of creation, chewing grass while quietly holding the universe together. In ancient cultures, birds were the cool kids who flew higher than regular animals. They weren't admired just for flying. People believed they could cross realms earth, sky, heaven, and the underworld. Birds flew through all those places. For the ancients, that made them natural messengers of the divine. In ancient Egypt, the ibis was sacred thanks to Thoth, the god of wisdom, writing, and magic. Thoth usually had the head of a curved beak ibis, long beak, thoughtful gaze, calm demeanor. The bird's careful movements mirrored the god's wise deliberation. Egrets flying along the Nile were seen as bad omens, tied to the moon's cycles and cosmic balance. Thousands of these birds were mummified and buried as a sign of honor, not because they were useful, but because they were sacred. Then there's the falcon, symbol of Horus, god of kingship and sunrise, with its piercing gaze and sky-high flights. The falcon represented divine watchfulness. Pharaohs, considered Horus's living sons, often associated themselves with this bird of prey. Even the eye of Horus, one of Egypt's oldest protective symbols, came from the sharp vision of the hawk. In Mesopotamia, the eagle was linked to storm and war gods, a creature too mighty to just hang around Earth. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, birds appear as signs of favor or warning, often bridging the mortal world and the realm of gods. The Greeks worshipped the eagle above all. It was the sacred animal of Zeus, king of the gods. Myth says Zeus would hurl thunderbolts from the sky with an eagle by his side. The bird became a symbol of divine power, fast, fierce, and untouchable. In India, the mighty Garuda, a giant bird god, served as the mount of Vishnu, the preserver god part eagle, part human. Garuda wasn't a pet. He was a cosmic warrior, protector of Dharma, and snake eater. His image adorned temples, shields, and royal symbols. Even in cultures without bird-shaped gods, these symbols survived. Freedom, vision, transformation, migrating birds crossing seasons, vanishing into clouds and returning like omens. Their appearances were tracked, their flights interpreted. To ancient people, birds were never just birds. They were the wings of the gods, the eyes of heaven, and wandering souls. Thomas Jefferson believed in ideas, not just politics, but big ideas. He imagined himself not a ruler, but a thinker, an enlightened guy. He surrounded himself with books, copied classical architecture in Monticello's design, and read Virgil, Locke, and Voltaire by candlelight. His mind wandered far beyond Virginia's plantations. He once said, "I cannot live without books." He meant it literally when he wrote, "All men are created equal in the Declaration of Independence." That wasn't political theater. It was a philosophical creed, a line that still echoes through time. Freedom, reason, self-rule that was Jefferson's religion. He imagined a world where monarchies collapsed, where free farmers tilled the land, where education beat superstition. But the problem was never his vision, it was who got to live in it. Even though he preached freedom, Jefferson owned over 600 slaves during his life. He knew the system was wrong. He wrote against slavery, calling it moral corruption, a disgusting stain. He even proposed gradual emancipation in some cases. His earlier work, but when it came time to act freeing the folks living and working at Monticello, he hesitated. Most of those people, he never freed them. Some he sold off, and others, like Sally Hemings, were stuck in way messier, more private conditions. For Jefferson, freedom was a nice ideal, but only for a small club, white folks with property. That's the political universe he actually believed in, even while dreaming of tearing down aristocracy. He held tight to the deep inequalities of slavery, benefiting from it both materially and politically. Historians are still wrestling with this contradiction today. Was Jefferson a hypocrite, a product of his time, or just a clever guy with a blind spot so huge it swallowed generations? Whatever the answer, one thing's clear: the man who fought for mankind's natural rights did so from a plantation, looking down on the people his pen conveniently forgot. And that paradox haunts his legacy, even as his words helped spark revolutions across continents. Jefferson was a freedom philosopher, but lived a life chained by the very shackles he created before becoming president. Thomas Jefferson was an architect not just of buildings, but of ideas. The U.S. was still a rough, unfinished experiment. Jefferson wanted to shape it with the precision of a draftsman using a compass on a fresh sheet of parchment. After writing the Declaration of Independence in 1776, he went back to Virginia and tried to rebuild the legal system from scratch. He pushed bills to scrap primogeniture, the law that gave all property to the eldest son, and to ditch laws giving special favors to the Church of England. He believed in killing inherited privileges, so white folks could rise up on merit, not just family tree. In 1779, as Virginia's governor, he faced brutal wartime logistics. The British Army invaded. Jefferson fled his estate when the Redcoats arrived, a move critics later called cowardly. But he wasn't a warrior. He was a planner, a thinker, a builder. His real battlefield was law and literature. When Jefferson went to France as minister in the 1780s, he soaked up Enlightenment spirit like a sponge. He dined with philosophers, studied architecture, and gawked at European civilization, all while trash-talking their aristocrats. He returned to America with crates of books, dome sketches, row house designs, and a sharp vision for the new republic. As Washington's Secretary of State, Jefferson quickly clashed with Alexander Hamilton. The country was splitting into factions. Hamilton wanted a strong central government and booming industry. Jefferson dreamed of a republic full of independent farmers and a weak federal government. Their feud wasn't just politics. It was a fight over America's sole blueprint. Jefferson feared cities. He called them sores on the political body. To him, the virtuous citizen was rural, self-reliant, educated, surrounded by land ideally inherited, but polished by hard work. His lifelong suspicion of banks, industrialization, and elite entanglements fueled his distrust of centralized power. Yet Jefferson himself never fully escaped the elite. He was wealthy, land-rich, and had deep political views. He embodied the very contradictions he claimed to fight against. Still, early in life, Jefferson laid the groundwork for America's identity, a land of freedom and equality for some, and a government designed by thinkers who believed reason could be written into law. But cracks started showing when Thomas Jefferson took the presidential oath in 1801, calling it the Revolution of 1800, peaceful, bloodless, and ideological after a brutal party civil war. The sitting president handed power to his political rival, a transfer nearly unheard of in the age of kings, Jefferson, the man who hated ceremony, and with zero fanfare. He showed up to his inauguration dressed like a regular guy, no fancy carriage, no wigs, just a dude, quietly ambitious and full of ideals. He declared he wanted a minimalist presidency, smaller government, lower taxes, and a downsized military. Yet his time in office totally reshaped the United States. The most famous act during Jefferson's presidency came in 1803, the Louisiana Purchase. For $15 million, he bought a chunk of land from Napoleon that was twice the size of the young republic, stretching from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains, over 800,000 square miles of pure potential. Definitely one of the most game-changing real estate deals in human history. And here's the kicker. It went against everything Jefferson claimed to believe in. The Constitution didn't say anything about the federal government buying new territory. Jefferson knew this. He even considered proposing a constitutional amendment to legalize it, then quietly dropped the idea. In the end, he justified it with his classic philosophical charm. Necessity overruled strict legality. Idealism bowed down. To opportunity, Jefferson dreamed of a free empire, a nation of farmers, spread across vast lands built on independence and virtue. But expansion came with consequences. The newly acquired land raised some tough questions. What about the native tribes already living there? Would slavery spread westward? Could the federal government even control such a huge territory? Jefferson sent Lewis and Clark to explore the frontier, hoping they'd find a water route to the Pacific and document the wonders of the land. But his private letters revealed deeper ambitions, economic expansion, territorial claims, and yes, a growing sense of manifest destiny for a man who liked to say he preferred his garden. Jefferson, as president, wielded massive power and used it for his own vision. He turned a republic into an empire overnight, sowing seeds that would change everything that came after, perched on a hill in Virginia. Monticello stands like a monument to Enlightenment ideals, symmetry, reason, and beauty, designed by Jefferson himself. It is filled with books, inventions, and classical references. But behind its elegant architecture lies a darker, harsher truth. Monticello was also a plantation run by enslaved labor at any given time. Over 100 enslaved men, women, and children lived and worked there. They tended the fields, made bricks, cooked meals, and maintained the house Jefferson called his retreat. Without them, Monticello and Jefferson's lifestyle wouldn't exist. This is the core contradiction of Jefferson's legacy, the man who wrote, "All men are created equal, yet treated humans as property, owning, managing, selling, and punishing them." He kept detailed records of the enslaved at Monticello, listing them by name, age, and value. Sometimes he even called them property. Jefferson openly condemned slavery as morally wrong and harmful to both enslaved people and owners alike. He described it as moral decay and a disgusting stain, yet he freed almost no one he enslaved. Over 600 people passed through his ownership in his lifetime, and fewer than 10 were ever freed, partly because of money Jefferson was drowning in debt most of his life. And enslaved labor was collateral, but partly just because he was lazy, powerless, or unwilling to break the system that kept his wealth and comfort afloat. Then there's Sally Hemings. Hemings was an enslaved woman at Monticello, and current evidence strongly supports that she bore at least 6 of Jefferson's children. She was also the half-sister of his late wife, a product of generations of slaves bound by rape, coercion, and blurry family lines. The relationship between Jefferson and Hemings remains one of the most talked about and uncomfortable parts of his life. She had no legal capacity to consent. Their children were born into slavery, although Jefferson later freed some of them, some while he was alive, others in his will. Monticello wasn't just a home. It was a mirror reflecting hypocrisy, rationalizations, and cold divisions that let a man with ideals live comfortably in an oppressive system. And Jefferson, for all his philosopher vibes, never really solved this contradiction. He just learned to live with it, behind the politician and plantation owner. Thomas Jefferson nurtured the soul of a scientist. He didn't just tinker with ideas. He dissected, observed, and measured them. If anything in nature could be cataloged, Jefferson wanted it in his notebook. He called science his passion. And this wasn't just talk. His library was packed with volumes on astronomy, agriculture, anatomy, and meteorology. He made daily weather observations. He experimented with crops, designed mechanical gadgets, and corresponded with scientists all over Europe. He wasn't religious in the traditional sense. He believed in observation, evidence, and what could be seen and understood. One of his lifelong obsessions was Megalonyx jeffersoni, a giant prehistoric sloth named after him. Following his study of fossils sent from a cave in Virginia, he believed America needed to prove itself not just politically, but biologically, that its flora and fauna were just as grand as Europe's. He even got into a weird science showdown with French naturalist Buffon, who claimed American animals were smaller and weaker than their European cousins. Jefferson fired back by sending him giant mammoth bones. Message received loud and clear. Jefferson's passion for science was deeply tied to America's frontier. When he commissioned the Lewis and Clark expedition, it wasn't just about maps and diplomacy. He wanted data, records on plants, animals, minerals, geography, and native peoples. He gave the explorers detailed instructions to document everything, bring back specimens, and reveal the unknown. He pictured the frontier not as wilderness, but as a laboratory where American knowledge would grow alongside its territory. But even here, Jefferson's curiosity hit blind spots. His fascination with Native American culture coexisted with policies that allowed their displacement. He romanticized their societies in his writings, yet supported land acquisitions that led to their erasure. Jefferson also applied his experimental mindset to architecture and farming. He designed his own plow. He dabbled in crop rotation methods. Monticello was, in many ways, a living experiment, half plantation, half scientific estate. For Jefferson, knowledge wasn't a luxury. It was a civic virtue. He believed a republic couldn't survive without educated citizens grounded in reason and inquiry. But like much in his life, his pursuit of truth came with some uncomfortable contradictions. Thomas Jefferson didn't hate religion. He just didn't trust it. To him, organized religion was dangerous, a tool often used to justify tyranny, silence questioning, and shackle minds. Hicks Ewids once wrote, "I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man." And by tyranny, he meant a lot dogma, clergy, and doctrine alike. Jefferson believed in God, but not the kind who meddled in everyday affairs or parted seas on command. His faith fit the Enlightenment mold deism, belief in a creator who set natural laws in motion, then stepped back to let the universe run its course. No miracles, no burning bushes, just gravity, logic, and the slow spin of planets. He admired Jesus, but not as a divine figure. Jefferson saw him as a moral philosopher, a teacher of compassion, humility, and peace, only to have his message distorted By centuries of church politics, Jefferson respected the Sermon on the Mount, letting centuries of church politics twist his message. Jefferson admired the Sermon on the Mount, but resurrection? Not so much. He was so into this view that he basically made his own Bible, literally. Armed with scissors and glue, Jefferson combed through the New Testament, cutting out all the miracles, divine stuff, and supernatural events. What was left was a thin booklet of moral teachings, no magic, just a ton of ethics. He called it The Life and Morals of Jesus of Nazareth. And nope, it was never meant for the public. It was a personal handbook on what he thought Christianity should be. Critics freaked out. Atheist was the insult hurled at him, especially during the brutal presidential campaigns of the early 1800s. Some even warned that electing Jefferson would lead to burning Bibles and turning churches into stables. None of that happened, but the suspicion lingered despite his doubts. Jefferson was a fierce defender of religious freedom. As the author of Virginia's Statute for Religious Freedom, he laid down the principle of church-state separation. It was one of only 3 achievements he wanted etched on his tombstone. For Jefferson, faith wasn't the enemy. Blind faith was in the quiet of Monticello, with the clock ticking and his quill scratching. Jefferson wasn't praying to a thunder god, but to reason itself. When Thomas Jefferson retired, he was exhausted, politically wounded, bankrupt, and increasingly haunted by contradictions casting shadows over his legacy. He retreated to Monticello, his beloved mountaintop estate, hoping to spend his twilight years of quiet reflection, farming, reading, and letter writing. But Jefferson's retirement looked nothing like what you'd expect. He founded the University of Virginia, personally designing the campus from neoclassical columns to the shape of lecture halls. He wanted it to be a secular temple to reason, a place where students could learn freely without church or royal interference. No religious tests, no dogma, just curiosity. He called the university his final useful act, and he wasn't kidding. But maybe the most surprising chapter of Jefferson's later years came from an old rival, John Adams. They used to be friends, partners in the fight for independence, co-signers of the Declaration of Independence, but politics pulled them apart. Jefferson became the standard bearer of the Democratic Republican Party. Adams led the Federalists. Their rivalry got nasty. Their letters stopped. Their friendship quietly died in the ashes of election seasons. For over a decade, they didn't talk, but in 1812, a mutual friend, Dr. Benjamin Rush, nudged them toward reconciliation. Jefferson sent a trial letter. Adams replied, and what followed became one of the most remarkable letter exchanges in American history. Over the next 14 years, they swapped more than 150 letters not to apologize, but to debate philosophy. They argued about politics, theology, science, memory, and old age. They talked about the revolution like 2 old soldiers comparing scars. They rarely agreed. In fact, they hardly ever agreed, but they listened. Their letters became proof that reasoned dialogue can bridge even the deepest divides. Jefferson's health declined, his debts piled up, He started selling parts of his library and land, Monticello, always more dream than practical estate, slowly crumbled around him, but in his final years, he found something rare, peace, and an old friend, once lost in the political chaos, became a companion in thought. Both helped build a nation, and now, in their final days, they were building something quieter understanding. On the morning of July 4th, 1826, Thomas Jefferson lay sick in bed at Monticello, too weak to stand, too proud to complain. He was 83, 50 years, frail health, crushing debt, and drifting in and out of consciousness. His family quietly gathered around. Outside, the country he helped found was celebrating its 50th birthday. Jefferson was always fascinated by time, by symbols, and now history seemed to be quietly conspiring. As fireworks exploded in distant towns and parades gathered in Virginia, Jefferson's breath slowed, his mind wandered. According to those by his bedside, he stirred slightly and asked one last question. Was it the fourth question? The answer was yes. He closed his eyes again. He died a few hours later, just after noon, but the story doesn't end there. Hundreds of miles away in Quincy, Massachusetts, John Adams' old friend, enemy, then friend again of Jefferson, was also on his deathbed. These two men didn't just rekindle their relationship, they synced up in a strange, powerful way. They'd been walking parallel paths for nearly half a century, always circling each other, Adams, sometimes lucid, sometimes not, is said to have spoken his last words on the very same day. Jefferson was still alive. He had no clue that Jefferson had died just 5 hours earlier. Two founding fathers, two presidents, two signers of the American Declaration of Independence. Both died on the same day, July 4th, 1826, the 50th anniversary of the country they helped create. Too poetic to believe, but totally true. News of their deaths spread like wildfire. Grief mixed with awe. The press spun it as God's plan. Like the founders waited to make sure the Republic survived half a century before letting go. Jefferson was buried on his beloved mountaintop. Beneath a simple obelisk he designed himself. His tombstone, by his request, didn't mention his presidency. Instead, it read, author of the Declaration of American Independence, the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, and founder of the University of Virginia. He wanted to be remembered not for power, but for principles in death as in life. Jefferson was a man of ideas flawed, smart, conflicted, and unforgettable. He left behind more than monuments, documents, or great thoughts. He left a debate lasting nearly 2 centuries. To some, he's the greatest founding father, the brain behind America's birth, the philosopher-president who dreamed of a nation born from liberty. To others, he's a symbol of hypocrisy, preaching equality while owning people. Both views are right, and neither tells the whole story alone over generations. Jefferson has been carved in marble, literally and figuratively. His words engraved on memorial walls. Students memorize his quotes. politicians quote him like scripture. He became a kind of secular prophet, his face stamped on coins and Mount Rushmore. But legends don't last forever. In recent decades, historians and the public have taken a closer look at the shadows. The slaves at Monticello, he refused to free most of them his whole life. His relationship with Sally Hemings, now widely acknowledged, was an unequal, complicated mix of coercion and consent that could never truly exist. Jefferson, who wrote moving lines on human rights, also sold people to pay debts. The man who imagined an empire of liberty helped expand slavery across America's borders. The thinker, the advocate for religious freedom, edited his own Bible to cut out parts he couldn't accept. He was probably America's first big contradiction, but contradiction doesn't mean no greatness. It means complexity. Jefferson shaped the world with his pen, but could never fully reshape himself. He was a pioneer in theory, cautious in practice, bold in philosophy but hesitant in action, a master of elegant language, sometimes hiding harsh truths beneath it. Today, Monticello tells a fuller story. The house stands, but the names of the enslaved workers who built it are finally recognized. Textbooks now place Jefferson alongside both his ideals and failures, and the country he helped build still wrestles with the promises he wrote and the reality he lived. The secret life of Jefferson was never really hidden. It's always been there, if you bother to look close enough. And maybe that's the lesson. A nation built on ideals should never stop questioning the people who wrote them, not to erase them, but to fully understand them and to do better